Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Ryan. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for the Central Division at Comcast. I want to talk to you today a little bit about our Comcast business and about our culture of diversity, equality, and inclusion, and some of our recent initiatives. So first, a couple of facts. Comcast Business is the fastest growing business unit within the Comcast NBC Universal family. We provide technology solutions to over 2 million business customers. We're powered by the nation's largest gig speed network and backed by 24/7 customer support. We provide companies with the solutions they need to make their businesses more productive. When we think about diversity, equality, and inclusion, we are highly committed to all initiatives that not only support our employees, but also our customers, the community, and overall communication. For the fourth time, Comcast NBC Universal has been named a Best of the Best Corporation for Inclusion by the National Business Inclusion Consortium. This year, in June, Comcast NBC Universal announced the development of a comprehensive multi-year plan to allocate $100 million in cash and media to fight injustice and inequality throughout the United States. We just introduced our Comcast Rise initiative, which is to help strengthen and empower small businesses hit hard by COVID-19. Rise stands for representation, investment, strength, and empowerment. We will support small businesses by offering grants, marketing, technology upgrades, media campaigns and connectivity, computer and voice equipment, as well as free marketing insights to applicants. To learn more about this program, we encourage you to visit www.comcastrise.com to learn about eligibility, requirements, and latest updates. Next is our Lift Zones. Last month, we announced a new initiative to promote digital equality for more Americans, including our communities of color. We have a commitment to launch 1,000 Lift Zones across the nation over the next few years. These Wi-Fi connected community centers will enable students, families, and community members to connect to the internet in safe spaces so that everyone can participate in distance learning, job opportunities, and digital skills training. Our first 200 Lift Zones have already been identified, several are already open, and we have plans to open others in more than a dozen cities this year. In addition to our community focus for our employees, we have had multiple initiatives throughout the year, including our first annual Diversity, Inclusion, and Equality Day. We've launched listening programs where our VPs and above are leveraging their experience and insights on how to create even greater opportunity and inclusiveness at all levels of the organization. So now, it is my honor to present the Culture Beats Strategy Breakout Session featuring the Coca-Cola Company, Jabian, and of course, Comcast's SVP of HR, Tina Simmons, all moderated by the CIO of the City of Atlanta, Gary Brantley.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Brantley, and I am the Chief Information Officer for the City of Atlanta. And I am sitting with three intelligent, beautiful women who actually are going to talk a little bit about our title today, which is Culture Beats Strategy. And so this is something that is a conversation going on across the United States. I'm the least knowledgeable on the panel. And so when we get started today, I'm going to have the ladies introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do. And so I'll start with Erin.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, panelists, for being here. I'm Erin Smith. I am a senior manager at Jabian Consulting. We are a local management and consulting firm. We do everything from strategy to process optimization, customer experience, human capital management, and really have a focus on D&I lately. So glad to be here. I lead up our D&I practice at Jabian and also co-lead one of our employee resource groups. So glad to be here.
Ashaki.
Hello, thank you, Gary. Thank you, panelists. My name is Ashaki Wilham, and I work for the Coca-Cola Company. I am in the Research and Development and Innovation Organization. I've been with the company for about 12 years. I won't talk about what we do because I think everybody's pretty familiar with what we do at the Coca-Cola Company. I'll talk a little bit more about what I do. I'm a director over there of the Flavor R&D department, and it's a pretty cool job. What I get to do is lead a group of flavorists that are tasked with developing the flavor systems that make our beverages the wonderful experience that they are. So really enjoy my job. And when I'm not doing that, I also am the vice president of the African American Technical Network, as well as I'm the program chair for the Coca-Cola Women in STEM committee.
And so finally, we have the coolest person on the panel, which is Tina. And so she's going to introduce herself.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, actually, you have the coolest title in your group, a flavorist.
Right.
I love that. I love
Thank
that.
you.
I'm so happy to be here, Gary. Thank you for that awesome introduction. Really honored to be here with my fellow panelists. I'm Tina Simmons. I'm senior vice president of human resources for Comcast NBC Universal, the Central Division, based here in Atlanta. Comcast NBC Universal is a technology and entertainment company, and I have the privilege of leading HR for about 28,000 or so employees across the southeastern, Midwest, North Central part of the United States.
All right, so let's get started. This is going to be fun. I'm telling you, this is the best panel that TAG is bringing forth. I'm letting you know that. I also want to thank Larry for allowing us to have this conversation that's really important. We're going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about inclusion. And so we're going to hit a couple of topics today that I think the world needs to hear. So let's start with one of the most important questions that I think we're going to talk about today. And we can start with you, Tina. Mm-hmm. What does organizational culture mean to you? Yeah. And can it make or break an organization's overall success?
Yeah, wow. So thanks for putting me up there first. It's a big load to carry. But I would say that culture is the glue, I think, that holds an organization together. And I had the opportunity to help create and document the Central Division culture that we use in order to kind of power our work. I was really pleased to get to be an ethnographer. So I got to kind of observe and look at things and look at the documents that we use and observe how we interact in meetings in order to figure out what were the things that were most important to us. And I had to put it down on paper, the things that we have created our centered culture out of. Central Division centered. We're not in marketing, but I liked it. So centered is we put people first, we're accountable, we work hard, we value growth, we're transparent, and we're customer focused. So those were the things, Gary, that we found are the commonalities within our organization, within those 28,000 employees that contribute to our success. And when we look at what things we're going to focus on, what things we want to invest in, it's through that filter, through that lens of the centered culture that I just shared with you. So it can absolutely make or break an organization.
That's pretty awesome. Ashaki?
Yes, thank you for that, Tina. I think that's wonderful. And, you know, we're all marketeers in one way, shape, or form. We have to all sell our ideas and make sure that we're communicating across the organization. So don't sell yourself short.
Okay. I feel better already.
So I believe that organizational culture is definitely a matter of shared values, experiences, expectations, and beliefs, right? And so just like strategy, organizational culture is definitely set by the leadership. And it's embedded and it definitely is reinforced by specific behaviors that are expected not only from the employees of the leaders, but also the leaders of the employees. And so like you, I had to write ours down so that I didn't forget. We have some foundational or core driving factors or beliefs or that we abide by within the Coca-Cola Company, and they are agility. So the ability to iterate, to not just stay stuck, but to move as things come about and come to us. Inclusion, so making sure that we have the right voices at the table. Curiosity, don't stop asking questions. What's next? What's next? What's next? And then empowerment. So not waiting for someone to tell us something, but going out there and getting things done.
So last but not least, Erin, I know Jabian You work for them, very familiar with them and the culture. What does organizational culture mean to you, and can it make or break an organization's overall success?
Yep, so absolutely, to piggyback off of what the two panelists said as well, organizational culture it's the personality of an organization. And it's the values, which are typically set forth by the leadership, but also the mindsets and behaviors of those employees at that organization. And it's not top down or bottom up, it's both, right? It's got to come from the top down, it's got to come from the bottom up. And if you think about like strong companies that have strong cultures, they've got that value from the leadership, they've got leadership there to set the example. And then you can think about some of the companies that we've heard about recently that have had incidents, and they've got some more toxic cultures, or they may not be as strong. The employees aren't happy, they're not engaged, they don't want to come to work, and you've got that kind of churn and burn, right? You'll have people in and out the door, and if leadership doesn't step in, and if leadership's not intentional with changing that, then of course it can make or break a strategy.
Yeah, and I agree with all three of you all, I say that sincerely. Culture is extremely important. It's very important. I talk a lot about it. I've written a book on it, and so it's just very, very important to an organization. And so without diving deep into my thoughts about it, because we want to hear from you, we have this pandemic going on, right? And how do you deal with culture during a pandemic when you don't necessarily have the normal interactions that you would in a business space, right? And so what are some of the organizational culture trends you are recognizing post-COVID-19? And we'll start with you, Erin.
So definitely an increase in communications. Mm-hmm. Everyone is home. Well, not everyone, but for the most part, people are working from home. They may feel disconnected. They may feel like they don't know what's going on in their company. So communication and change management is key. And we at Jabian, so we now do town halls. And we were doing weekly town halls, and now we've taken the cadence to more bi-weekly. But employees want to know, and they want to know, one, job security. So there's job security or salary adjustments and things like that. So really being transparent with the employees and keeping that open communication is key, especially with folks all in different locations.
Ashaki?
Yeah, I would just agree and piggyback off of what Erin said, that it's so important to utilize technology for good, and to ensure that we are staying connected to our team. So I think post-COVID, there's going to be more working from home, and we need to really use this time to make sure that we make sure that those practices are really cemented, and that we have those cadences, and that we're keeping in contact with our employees, because I think that contact helps to foster better engagement. Another thing that we're seeing is that a lot of companies are trying to pivot. They're trying to figure out how they're going to come out of this crisis, right? Mm-hmm. And they're restructuring their organizations, and not restructuring for efficiency, but for resiliency. They know that those companies that were more resilient going in have been faster to come out of all of this. And then I think another aspect of it is really the impact of the employer on the employee. So now there was always a focus on wellness, because we know that the more healthy an employee is, the better employee they're going to be. But now it's not just about physical wellness, it's about emotional wellness, it's about financial wellness. I was listening to NPR the other day, and there was a conversation about a company helping employees to start their own savings programs that were not attached to 401k. So companies are really starting to take this seriously.
Tina, what's going on at Comcast?
Wow. I mean, I think Erin and Ashaki really hit some of the key points. A couple that definitely the transparency piece, and I'll speak on that in a second. But one is from the centered culture that I shared with you, is we put people first. Yep. And that looked like, let's call it maybe, I think it was March 13th, the day that shall live in infamy, when we sent pretty much 14,000 people home to work. Now, that meant the other 14,000 were still out there because we've got technicians who are out there going into customers' homes, we've got retail stores, we've got face-to-face sales, et cetera. So we put people first is really the thing that has come to the forefront through the pandemic, because if we don't, I mean, literally, I talked to my HR team about the fact that with our leadership, we have literally saved lives. And if we didn't put people first, if we didn't help leaders who maybe were more traditional and were worried about sending people to work from home, we had to use change management to get people over that, so we could get folks home so they could be working productively and get some safety protocols out there really quickly in terms of our technicians who are and our warehouse people who are still interacting face to face, because we are considered an essential service. Internet is an essential service. All these folks who are working from home, they need something in order to, a tool in order to work from home. So we couldn't shut down. I think that's something that has come to the forefront, making sure that we're caring for our employees. And then the transparency piece, and none of us knows what's going on. So, the doctors don't know what's going on, the scientists don't know what's going on. So to be able to talk comfortably to employees and say, we'll tell you what we know when we know it, but we will also share what we, when we don't know the answer. But we promise we will keep the communication going, just as you two ladies have said, so they at least understand that we are out there, we're observant, we're working with the authorities, we're working with our internal medical teams, et cetera, to make sure that we not only sustain the business, but can thrive as a business. So from a job security perspective, they're cared for as well. So there's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's quite difficult, but it's been pretty amazing to see the response from different organizations, even from the organization that I'm a part of. We put people first. I'm having more conversations around health, well-being, making sure that you're taking care of your family, because, quite honestly, and I talk about this before, we deal with a lot of disasters in IT, but we've never dealt with a disaster regarding human life like we have right now. So it's a little bit different, and then trying to create all of these technological pathways for people to still be able to be efficient. And so I was talking to one CEO, and he said, we're pulling from buckets of our culture to kind of keep things sustainable in this remote environment. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because I feel like we've done that too. We've talked about accountability. And in this setting, you have to be accountable. Accountability is extremely important in order to be efficient this way. So I agree with everything that you are saying. And so, this third question, right? I got this third question here. What things do you believe have shifted the most? Would that be the leadership styles, the reliance on technology, the realization of the importance of employee feedback and input? Out of the three, what do you feel like has shifted the most? And it's a lot to that question, so if you need me to repeat it, please let me know. And so we'll start with you, Ashaki.
I'm going to cheat and say D, all of the above. I know you asked for one, but I'm going to cheat, just because I think it is absolutely a combination of all of them. And I have definitely seen at the Coca-Cola Company a pivot. We talked about how when you're in the communication, the cadence moving from, a weekly to a biweekly, and then maybe back because there's new information coming out in the organization. We've seen the fact that, the reliance on technology. So you mentioned we wouldn't be able to do anything that we're doing without the technology foundation being solid and without having those systems put in place to be able to rely on technology. Unfortunately, I've had many a day between being on a Zoom call, having to present, having my husband work in the next room, and my two boys on digital learning, and not being able to do what I needed to do. So absolutely that reliance on technology as well. So it's a combination of all of those things. I don't think it's just one.
Just one, okay. But Erin?
I mean, I agree. I'm not gonna just pick one. I think, of course, technology is a given. We, of course, have had to rely on technology, but also thinking about the leadership styles. And at Jabian, we're, of course, smaller. We're not as big as Coke and Comcast, but Our partners have always had an open door policy, right? And it's always, if you have questions, you can come to them. But now what I've seen, and not to say they weren't doing it before, but now it's more of them coming to us and saying, what can we do for you? And so, I mean, if that kind of goes from the leadership styles, transitions to the focus on the employee, right, and the individual, because it's no one-size-fits-all approach. And everybody's got different circumstances, and everybody's got different things going on at home. So really being able to hone in on each individual employee, understand what they've got, what resources they need, and how you can cater to each of the individual employees.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like so far it's D and above, all of the above. So let's see what Tina has to say about that.
Yeah, I'm cheating off of Ashaki paper and sticking with D. It really has, and that was actually a really good question, because those are pretty much the key levers that we've had to use through the pandemic, the leadership piece, and leaders being able to pivot and be transparent and show vulnerability and saying I don't know in front of 30,000 employees and feeling confident with that, but backing it up with, but when I do know, I will share. The technology has been, holy cow, I mean, it's been a savior for us in terms of, again, allowing us as a business to thrive, but also to allow the connections so we can support our customers. And then the focusing on the employee. I am, and I'm hoping some of our team members would have an opportunity to participate in today's session because they are heroes. They are, they're interacting every day with our customers. They're taking their calls. They're installing their service. They're repairing their service. They're selling them technology so they can feed their families. And it is to see what they do every day, and they come to work ready to go, not knowing all of the answers, but ready and willing to come with us because of the culture that we have. I'm just eternally grateful for what they've done as a community, as a Comcast community.
Yeah, well, it sounds like all three are equally important, and I would agree with you all. I think that, of course, technology, and I work in technology, being at the forefront, it was kind of like when this happened, let's see what you got, right? All right. I feel like every CIO and leader was kind of put on the spot to really be able to be, agile, flexible, to see if they could move the organization. And as you know, we have this stigma in government where they feel like, we're slow, right? That's not always true. But at the same time, to turn a ship to across companies the size of the companies that you work for here is amazing. And so to see and hear some of the things that you all were talking about, employee feedback, extremely important, right? I agree with you all. And so, as we start to move on, through these questions, I have another question for you. What changes do you see happening in the future to continue this momentum, right, behind recognizing the importance of creating a culture which fosters inclusion and innovation? Let's start. I see Tina said don't start with me. Let's start with Tina.
So, Professor, I'm sorry, ask the question again. I feel like
it's really quite simple. I'm gonna cut it down. What changes do you see happening in the future to continue this momentum, if any? Yeah,
oh my gosh, so we literally kicked off a work stream yesterday called The Future of Work. So we can figure out how do we ensure we protect our culture, because it's clear that this is not going away. When this started back in March, we were all, hey, you figure by end of year, because originally we said you won't have to return to the office before the end of the year. Well, just 2 Fridays ago, we sent out a message that, well, you're not going to, if you're currently working from home, you're not going to be returning to the office anytime before June of 21. So it's clear that this is going a lot longer than any of us expected. So now we're looking at, well, what does that mean in terms of the work? So we come from a culture, from a background of having face-to-face meetings for sales calls. But you know what? During the entire pandemic, we had a lot of sales calls over Teams meetings or over Zoom. and it worked okay. We've had the office that I work in, there are 9 lovely floors, and there's basically a person per floor. And everyone else is working from home who's not facing customers. So how are we going to have those water cooler moments with people that we used to have? How do you make sure that you are showing appreciation for folks? The biggest thing, and I'll close with this, that we're concerned about is we work hard in our culture. Folks we're at that fatigue level now. I mean, I turned on the TV yesterday and it was about the murder hornets. Okay, I can't. There is nothing else that I cannot. So what do you do? How do you keep people motivated to keep going into their living rooms with their 3 kids on virtual school, the husband or the spouse or whatever is virtual work, and you've got riots, you've got pandemic, you've got murder hornets, you've got, whatever. It's just incredible what the resilience, and you use this word, I think, Ashaki, resilience that people have. So how can we make sure that they are able to connect to that resilience so they are able to keep going? Because this is definitely a marathon, one of the worst evil marathons that I've ever witnessed, but it's something that we need to help our folks endure and thrive much longer than we thought when this all kicked off back in March.
Ashaki?
Yeah, so as you might be aware, our company is going through a major reorganization right now. And through that process, there are several things that are being implemented that I think will help with the culture, despite the change and despite the difficulty and disruption of the change. So one of those things is related to being a networked organization. And again, that goes back to, we are a global company, and I myself traveled very extensively in 2019. I was all over the world. But when the world shut down and said, hey, you can't do that anymore, we're not letting you in, we had to find different ways of being able to communicate, and we did it productively. Yeah. So I think that, when we're able to get back to whatever that new normal, to whatever that new normal looks like, I think there'll be a significant reduction in that travel and in figuring out how we leverage other ways to communicate with one another and to be that networked organization. Yeah. I was reading an article also that kind of talked about the fact that we're going to be moving from critical roles to critical skills. So critical roles may be specific to a function or a team or a department, whereas critical skills can cross over, exactly, they can cross over multiple organizations, multiple functions, and they not only help to create advantage for the company, competitive advantage for the company, but they also broaden the capabilities of that employee. Mm-hmm. So you're building a better employee. Mm-hmm. And we know that during this time, when people weren't able to necessarily do their work, there was a lot of capability building. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be leveraged as well moving forward. Yeah. So those are a couple of the thoughts that I have around that.
Yeah, for the future, what do you see, Erin?
All of that. Tita, you hit on the water cooler moments, right? And it's just people being creative and innovative on how do you interact with people. And we had to do it. We had to, at Jabian, we're people. Like we want to be around people. We want to talk. We want to catch up and see how your day's going. See, what did you do this weekend? How's your kids? So we had to quickly pivot and figure that out. So of course, Zoom, Teams, virtual means, but then like you said, you get fatigued. And so just getting creative, we've recently been doing parks. So we'll meet social distance, everybody comes out to a park, and then in the spirit of inclusivity, we are doing them around the whole Atlanta area because if somebody lives on the south side, of course they don't want to be driving up to Gwinnett. But really just getting creative. You also talked about the technology piece of it. We're whiteboarders, we're collaborative. Mm-hmm. We want to sit in a room, and if we have an idea, we jump up on the whiteboard. Mm-hmm. How do you do that, right? So understanding, we've been looking at different whiteboarding apps and using different whiteboarding apps so that we can do this virtually. Mm-hmm. So it really is just going to be about adapting adapting from a technology space, adapting from a people space as well. So agree with all of those points.
Yeah, I was, before this all started, we were talking about a telework in my organization, especially in IT, and everybody was jumping to do it. Right now, they're like, I want to come back to work, I don't know if this is for me. And it gets pretty interesting because a lot of times when you're working together in a room, you can feel the energy as well, right?
Yeah.
And how do you duplicate that at home? You get the fatigue, like you said, you have, if you got a spouse there in the other room saying, hey, you're talking too loud, can you move to the other room? And, it's just all these different components that are in play. I looked in my closet today and saw all these suits I feel like I wasted money on. It's just like, is this ever going to be the case? And I was talking to another CEO, just around the fact he was complaining about his travel. And I used to too. And at the same time, he was saying, I miss going to my room in the hotel and down to the restaurant to talk to my colleagues, right? So it's amazing that some of the things that some of us may have asked for, we're actually getting right now. We're saying, hey, this isn't exactly the way we want it to go. Yeah. So we have about 10 more minutes, right? And I have 2 more questions, but I have one question that I'm gonna throw at you that's kind of a spin. And so we talked about a lot of the things that you're doing, right? A lot of the great things that you're doing in your organization, a lot of the great information you've been giving on culture, inclusion, strategy. But I want to know one major challenge from each of you all that you're experiencing in your organization as it relates to culture and having to do these things remotely. And so we'll start with you, Erin.
I think I'd probably go back to that we are people. And like you said, trying to mimic being in the room with somebody was something that we quickly had to adapt to. And we've gotten creative with it. It's still evolving, right? So I think I would say at Jabian, that's probably our biggest challenge, and how we're trying to work around it. So.
Yeah, and Coca-Cola, I know you all have some challenges. You're a big, diverse organization with that's a big engine to move. So what would you say is a major challenge that you see?
I would say that a big challenge for us is that work-life balance. So you'll see there are a lot of people who are very passionate about the work that they do. And now the accessibility to that work is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we know that while passion is wonderful, there's a point at which, like you said, you can get burnt out. So it's really important to set up those boundaries to make sure that there is that empathetic leadership, that when I'm checking in with my team, I'm asking first, before I jump into the work, how are you? How are you feeling today? What's going on? How's your family? That we ensure that employees are taking their vacation. It's a little challenging because who wants to take vacation when you can't really go anywhere, right? But it's still important, even if you're just completely disconnecting. You're not looking at the phone. You're not turning on the computer. Just making sure that there's that work-life balance and those boundaries so that you can stay energized for the work that's ahead.
What about you, Tina?
I build on everything these are the best panelists
ever.
I build on everything that you've said, and the challenge that I see is how do we, again, a word I love, resilience, how do we ensure resilience of the organization? So there are a few things that we're doing, making sure that folks are taking their vacation so they can take that break so they can be resilient, literally giving their bodies, their minds a break. Doing things like, and some things are hits and some are misses, but we have things like some of our colleagues are reading virtually to the other colleagues' kids. I mean, so it's like a parent hour or whatever where you're reading, stories. We have virtual guided meditations, which is really funny to see when you see all of the folks there, at home or in the office doing virtual meditation, virtual yoga. We are doing, virtual coffee breaks, virtual sip-in paints. All sorts of things. Everything's virtual, with the exception of, say, for our customer-facing, our technicians, and it's really about making sure that in a socially distanced way, we're giving them, lunches, things of that nature. But it is, for us, the challenge again is making sure that folks are resilient because we're in this for the long run, and giving different options for people to relax, reset, recharge, and connect, most importantly. So a lot, and we are open to just about anything. If it's safe, legal, ethical, we're looking into doing it. So we're open.
Well, just know I'm going to be calling you ladies to figure out what types of exercises we can do in our organization, because it seems like you have some really good ideas. I would say when work starts and stops is probably been the biggest challenge for us. Typically, even if you stayed till 6 or 7, you knew you were getting in your car to go home.
Right.
But if you're already at home, it just seems like the meetings keep piling up and piling up. And at some particular point, I remember having to set guidelines around when our organization, the IT organization's day needed to end, because it was nonstop. And so you're right, mental health is important. We had a virtual DJ session where everybody was at home dancing, and it's just like, how long is that gonna continue to last? It was fun when it first started, but it's kind of like, now I don't want to see you dancing anymore. So we're going through that, and it's been pretty interesting. And so we have one last question, right? And before we get out of here, and we are taking all the precautions to be safe. These ladies made sure that took place. So as we move to our last question, if you had one word of advice to people tuning in for embracing organizational culture shifts, what would it be? What would you implore them to do to make that change? And so we'll start with you, Ashaki.
I would say be open to change. Change is absolutely essential for growth. And if we're not changing, if things are staying stagnant and not changing, then we're not growing. So I would just say be open to it and and embrace it.
Tina?
Yeah, I've overused this word, but I'll use it again with another one, and that's resilience and to be hopeful. Because I think, the hopeful piece is, that'll get you up in the morning, it'll get you to that 10th Zoom Teams call of the day, but knowing that this is a moment in time and that there will be a day, we'll have our BA new, as we call it, where we will be able to connect in much better ways. So it's resilience and remain hopeful.
Yep. Erin?
Yeah, I would say patience and understanding that change it's a marathon and it's not a sprint, and keeping a people mind. So we talked about all of these different initiatives that we're doing from a people perspective, but throughout that patience, just make sure that you are putting your people first. And I like to, Maya Angelou had a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's it's not about what you say or do, but how you make people feel. And that is what really, if you go into it with a people-centered approach and be patient and let that change gradually evolve, your company will succeed.
So we've heard it first, and listen, let me tell you something. This has been insightful for me. I'm sure it's going to be insightful for you when you get a chance to hear from these wonderful ladies. I think all the viewpoints that have come across today have been outstanding. It's amazing that walking into a studio like this is the highlight of my day. Having to put on some real clothes and, completely, because sometimes we sit on these Zoom calls and we no telling it's the top and that's it. So, but it's been absolutely wonderful to hear all of the insights that you all have brought here. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to come and have this conversation. I think it's a much needed conversation. And last but not least, again, like I started, I want to thank the TAG organization for bringing us together to really have a very insightful conversation on culture and strategy. And I'll say to you before we get out of here, please stay safe. Please make sure that you are social distancing, and please make sure that you are putting, as they described earlier, mental health first and family first. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.